we saw that
All
with Jim
right,
Tom.
guys, and we are back with Extra Point with Phil Jones. Welcome in, everybody.
All right, guys, welcome in. As you heard Flint Dykes in his resounding invitation and opening, greeting everybody. Indeed, welcome back, excuse me, to another week of Extra Point with Phil Jones. Mark Dykes not able to join us this week, but you can see on the screen in place of Mark Dykes, we have back by popular demand. Well, not really. I just happened to call him up about 3 o'clock today and said, "Hey, Larry, can you do the show with me?" It's Larry Godwin. What's up, LG?
What's up, man? Listen, I just came in from work and ready to talk high school football because Phil, I'm starting to get an itch, man. It's July, the dead week is over with, and now we're all getting tunnel vision, and it's a straight shot to the start of the season now.
Indeed, it is. And as Larry just mentioned, it is the dead week is over. So that's the second dead week that we've had, and it is now full bore ahead, as I think the ship's captain says, full steam ahead as we get ready now, Larry. No more interruptions. It's straight to the pre-game or the preseason scrimmages that some teams will have. Some teams have more than one. And then we'll be ready to start the season before you know it.
Heck yeah, man. I can't wait. Can't wait.
I can't either. Guys, a lot to talk about today. I made a late post on our ITG Next Facebook page talking about some of the potential topics that we'll get to today, time permitting. Obviously, what you guys are talking about, we want to hear about. So by all means, let us know where you're watching the show from and who your favorite team is. You guys know the drill. All of you that are veterans of the show, if you're not used to the show, well, welcome in. We do this every Monday at 5:30. I am live from Mellow Mushroom, where we have a good crowd on hand here today. Of course, great pizza. We want to thank our friends here at Mellow Mushroom for taking care of us. And let me get the camera straightened out a little bit there. There we go.
And Phil, I'm live from the 50-yard line in Martin Stadium.
I was just about to say, so I'm from Mellow Mushroom. Larry, as you can see, is live at Martin Stadium. Amazingly, it's already dark there.
I know, right?
At Martin Stadium. How does that work?
This is part of my dream fantasy world where football season has already started. We're kidding around. This is my background that I have.
Right. Sure.
So I'm actually in my home office, but this is the kind of mood that we're all in. We just cannot wait until the start of the season.
Speaking of which, Larry, and guys, I'm going to get to all of our viewers here in a minute. I'm trying to go down the line and see who all is in the house. By all means, thanks so much for joining us, and let me know what's on your mind. But Larry, I don't know if it's just me, and I don't want to propose this to the everybody that's watching the show as well. I got to tell you, this off season, there has been more talk. I think there's been more looking forward to the start of the regular season. A lot of times in the off season, Larry, you'll have these lulls, and people will just kind of go, let high school football go by the wayside.
Yeah.
And it'll become, not really a topic that's on the front of everybody's mind. But I don't think that's been the case this year. I will admit, us doing this podcast year round, that helps to keep high school football in, on everybody's mind. But other than that, I just think that there has been more anticipation to the 2025 high school football season. Have you seen that to be the point? And guys, what do y'all think about that?
Yeah, normally in the off season, which starts for some right after November when the season's over with and going into December. But even if your team goes deep into the playoffs and you get into the January after Christmas time frame, and it's kind of a lull. There's nothing to talk about for a while, but that hadn't been the case this year. A lot of transfers going on around the state, and then the GHSA has been engaged in talks of reclassification. Power rankings for the playoffs, not just for one classification, but potentially for all the classifications, that kind of stuff. They've looked at different types of scenarios on how to reclassify based on total sports performance. So there's been a lot of stuff, and plus the regular moving around of coaches. And then you had some late season headlining stuff like Tucker Pruitt going over to Appleton County that captivated a lot of people's attention. And so you had a lot of stuff going on during the off season that kept high school football in the forefront of everyone's mind. And now we're on the cusp of going through that threshold that I think everybody's fired up and ready to go.
I agree. I couldn't say it better myself, Larry. So real quick, I want to take a look at who all is in the house. We got a lot of people that are just joining board. So thank you guys so much for your support. My buddy Matt DeBuck. It's great to see Coach back.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah, right. Me too, Larry. It's like, where you been, Matt?
Listen,
the other day I had to call him and say, did you forget about me? He said, Phil, who? I think you got the wrong number. No, just kidding. He did not. But Matt DeBuck, the multi-state champion coach from Fort Lauderdale's Cardinal Gibbons, checking in with us. Coach, it's really great to see you, my man. By the way, I am drinking a Pepsi for you, and I'm also eating some mellow mushroom pizza for you as well, Matt. Really good to see you in the house. Larry, what were you saying?
Well, Matt is one of Coach. I guess I should call him Coach DeBuck. He is one of those names because Phil, it's no secret that a lot of Florida coaches have moved up to Georgia to take advantage of the higher pay. Because let's be honest, Florida high school football coaches they don't get paid very much compared to their neighboring states like Georgia and Alabama. So there's a lot of coaches from the Florida ranks that have moved up in Georgia. Camden County's head coach, Coach Rowland, is the latest one in South Georgia that's made the move after winning a state championship down there, close to the Daytona area. So I keep waiting for a big name like a Matt DeBuck to come join us up here in Georgia, because he's got a unique, wide open, spread him, sling it all over the field kind of offense that would be unique for Georgia and very entertaining to watch.
Listen, I get asked about Matt DeBuck quite a bit. Matt is a descendant, if you will, from a high school offense that liked to throw it around. He's a receiver. He is, by the way, an alumni of where he coaches now at Cardinal Gibbons. So as a player, he was brought up in that philosophy of throwing it around, kind of the old air raid. We don't hear that a lot anymore, right?
Yeah.
Air raid. But remember, that became kind of the hallmark of I'm trying to think of some of the coaches. I can only reference some of the local coaches that I'm familiar with. I remember Jerry Glanville. I know some of you may say, well, that's not the best. Hey, listen, Jerry Glanville was a winning coach. If you'll remember, he did it with the Houston Oilers and the Atlanta Falcons. That's just one of the one of the few names that comes up. But anyway, Matt DeBuck then went to Texas A&M or Texas Tech as a player.
Yeah.
And again, got involved in that wide open offense, then went to the Canadian Football League. And, Canadian Football League, you only get 3 downs. If you've never watched a CFL game, Canadian Football League game, guys, you got to watch it. It is something else. You get basically 2 downs to get a first down. If you don't get a first down, you punt on 3rd down instead of 4th down. You believe that?
Yeah, I've watched that game. I remember years ago when the NFL was on strike and there wasn't much to watch as far as football goes, and Canadian football was on.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Go ahead, Larry.
And Canadian football was on, so it was kind of weird seeing the field was longer and the goalposts were kind of wonky in the end zone, and the wide receivers can get a running start. It's like, what the heck kind of game is this?
Exactly, wide open. But anyway, great to see my buddy Matt DeBuck again. And yeah, we hope we'll see him sometime up here in Georgia. Would love to have him. And you're right, Matt DeBuck. Like Mike Leach is the guy I was trying to think of. May he rest in peace. Mike Leach, man, sort of the godfather, if you would, to the run and shoot, air raid, call it what you will. Let's see who else we got checking out the show today. We got David Woods checking in from Grayson Rams country. Got to tell you, Larry, Grayson Rams going to be right back up at the top as one of the favorites to win the state championship, to repeat as state champions this year.
To me, I don't even think it's a question. I don't think Buford's the team to beat. I think Grayson is the team to beat this year.
Another one that I think is going to be and look, I wrote a story about this not long ago. Several of the state champions, Larry, from 2024, I think have an excellent chance of repeating in 2025. I think North Dakota, one of those teams, Grayson, one of those teams, and Gabe Garrett, who's checking in with us. His Toombs County Bulldogs are another team, I think, that have an excellent chance of repeating as state champions this year.
Phil, isn't it, this is the last time I'll talk about this and we can move on, but isn't it interesting how, head coaches adopt the systems that they adopt, whether it's an offensive scheme or a defensive scheme? Most of the time, it's probably the way the coach that they played under as they were growing up, and they basically got their training from that coach. They fell in love with it, learned it inside and out. So by the time they became a coach, that was their go-to system because they had been trained up in it. I think it's just fascinating how that kind of stuff just evolves in the life of a coach.
It's a great point. And we're just talking about Matt DeBuck, and not to make it the Matt DeBuck show, although it sounds like we already have. But that's what Matt DeBuck did. Grew up as a player in high school, college, professional, and of course now still is adopted as back as a head coach. So you're absolutely right, Larry. That's a really good point. But all right, so some talking points we're going to get to, and don't worry, guys. I'm going to name some of you other guys that are checking out the show. But we posted a graphic today. I say we, my buddy Flint Dykes, who of course is right now producing the show, doing a great job. By the way, let us know what you think about the new format. I like it a lot. Larry Godwin had been a big advocate of us going to this format for a while, and Larry, it obviously paid off. So your persistence did. But one of the things that we talked about, and Flint put up a great graphic, and this was born out of a conversation that I had talking about, the heat that we've got. And obviously the first month of the season, it's going to be hot in some of these places. And we're going to be talking about where you guys are going to be opening week. But, guys, what was the hottest game you were ever a part of? Can you remember? I can remember, and this is the reason that we put together this graphic. Hottest game I've ever been involved in was 2 years ago. That would have been, I guess, the 2023 season. It was one of our ITG Next Game of the Weeks, which, of course, we're going to be doing again this year. But ITG Next Georgia Game of the Week, we were at Langston Hughes Stadium. They're on the campus of Langston Hughes High School, as they were hosting Carver of Atlanta. No, I'm sorry. McEachern. The McEachern Indians were in town. And I'm going to tell you, it was blazing hot. It was one of those nights where you could get no relief. Heat doesn't really affect me that bad, just going up in South Georgia. I mean, I kind of like it. I like it better than the cold, but that was one of the hottest nights. And it was just not me. It was everybody. Nobody wanted to go into the press box. One thing that didn't help, press box had no air conditioning. But there was no relief to be found everywhere. So it's very easy. That was the hottest game I've ever been involved in as a player, as a fan, whatever. Larry, what do you think? And guys, what do y'all think? What was the hottest game you ever been a part of?
Phil, I remember this was a game back in 2016. We're going way back then. And I'm actually trying to pull up who was the quarterback? I can't remember who was the quarterback. Was it Michael Barrett? It might have been Michael Barrett.
For Lowndes?
But anyway, Lowndes had a decent season that year, 10-3 overall.
What year are you talking about, Larry?
This was year 2016. So Lowndes was 10-3 overall, but more importantly, in the first round of the playoffs that year, Hillgrove came to Martin Stadium. And Phil, when I say that was a shootout, that is an understatement. The final score for that game. Well, before I give you the final score, I remember being up in the radio booth. I was helping the radio team that year, and I remember when Lowndes had gone over the. I'm saying this right, okay? So when Lowndes had gone over the 80-point mark, I remember vividly leaning over to one of the radio guys, said, "I'm still worried we might lose this game." Phil, the final score was 92-61 in a playoff.
I remember that game.
In a playoff game against Hillgrove. So that was the most exciting game that I've ever witnessed in person.
Okay, now here's a fun little factoid for you. Who was the head coach of Hillgrove?
Uh, Shoot, I know
Kind of a
the
trick,
name.
kind of a trick question here.
I know the name because it was the guy that came down and spent a couple seasons at Worth County. What was his name, Phil?
Okay. So I was thinking it was your former defensive coordinator.
No, this was before Byron Slack went up there.
Okay, so that would have been Philip. Gosh, I cannot believe I can't remember his last name. Somebody, guys, I guarantee you, one of our listeners, viewers will get it. Yeah, he did spend a couple of years at Worth County. You know what he was famous for?
The air raid offense.
Well, no shoes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And
it was winter practices. Yeah,
it was winter time in November, and he had on that night. He had on shorts and flip flops.
Matt, my man just does not care, and you know what? So be it. He was a good football coach, but man, he did not really care about the old attire. Did not matter to him. I tell you, he was the most fishing crazy coach I ever met. But anyway, somebody help us out with that. What's that gentleman's name that we're trying to? And I know him personally, but I can't recall his name. But anyway, so hottest game you ever been involved with? What's that?
Phil Ironside.
That's right, Philip Ironside. Man, I hate that. I can't come up with that. All right. So Dead Week is over. Where are you guys going to be opening week? I gotta tell you, there's going to be some great season week 1 openers. Everybody is looking forward to that Buford Milton opener that's going to christen the brand new stadium. I know we've all been seeing all the posts on social media about all the drone shots that everybody's getting. I've been talking to Tony Wolf, the athletic director up at Buford. We're going to go up there and kind of get a sneak peek once they get their official certificate of occupancy. We want to obviously go down and take a tour of everything, the stadium inside and out. So we're waiting on that. Once we do, ITG is going to go up there and take a look and get the tour, if you will, from our friend Tony Wolf and the fine folks at Buford. So looking forward to that. However, having said that, you can obviously take a look at these drone shots that they've been getting from overhead. Everybody's been following the update on the stadium, the construction. Man, it is going to be something to behold when it comes to high school football stadiums, right, Larry?
Oh my gosh, it is beautiful. I think everybody has seen it by now. It's made the nationwide circuit, been picked up by a lot of different media outlets, including Max Preps and others. So it is a beautiful stadium, and man, what a sweet deal on how that thing came together. We have a mutual friend up there in one of the play-by-play guys up there, and he confirmed this for me. The city of Buford basically paid for that stadium for the school system, right, with the understanding that the city can use it for other purposes that well as well. But that's a win-win situation for everybody. Certainly for the team and the football players, but for the school system and the city do that as well. That is a way that governments can kind of work together to, fulfill a common purpose. But you're right, man. That is such a beautiful, beautiful stadium.
Yeah, it really is. By the way, I want to say hello to Austin A.B. Butler. My man A.B., what's up, brother, up there in the Rome area? I know you're looking forward to what's going to be happening up in the Northwest Georgia area. Austin, appreciate you as always. Kelly Fountain, and speaking of Rome, another big Rome fan. What's up, Kelly? You guys may remember Kelly, and of course you may remember Reese Fountain. Fantastic quarterback at Rome. I tell you, Rome, man, they are kind of quietly, I say quietly, they're kind of quietly, contending for yet another appearance in the state championship game this year. But man, they're in that dreaded class 5, 5A, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's got to be the hardest classification in the state. Got a lot of great football teams that are championship worthy, Larry, but obviously only two teams can make it to the title game.
Yeah, man. So, I'm hoping that some of the Southern schools can represent a little bit better this year in the upcoming seasons. That I'm starting to kind of lose my hope when it comes to seeing Southern schools in the final game of the season. Really doesn't matter what classification is. It just seems like the football prowess is making a major shift to the Metro Atlanta area. So, we always look forward to the state championship game, but it just seems like there's fewer and fewer Southern schools in it every year.
There really is. And of course, we've talked about this particular topic. Everybody wanted to talk about, who we think is going to be the next team from South Georgia that contends for a state championship. I mean, again, we're talking about Class 6A. And I think it's really the usual suspects.
Oh.
We good? Yeah, I don't either. But anyway, we were talking about, class, who's going to be the next team, that is, I guess, our best chance at winning a state championship from the South, from Southern Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, you take a look at 1-6A. And what I was saying before we blacked out there, I think 1-6A, we talked about this a little bit last year. I think it is as wide open as it's ever been.
Yeah.
And really I think because of that, Larry, I don't think it really bodes well in terms of a South Georgia team being able to represent in a championship game because 1-6A is so diluted. And again, I'm not taking any shots. I'm just saying there's not that preeminent team that's head and shoulders above everybody else. Do you agree with that? And guys, what do y'all think about that?
I do. Specifically Region 1-6A. It started last year with all the new coaches, a lot of teams graduating players all at the same time, influx of new talent, and feel we have that situation again. But this year is a little bit different because of a number of our schools in this region have gotten a number of transfers into their program. So that is a variable that's unknown and how it's going to play out on the field as well. So as you said, and rightfully so, Region 1-6A is up for grabs. Colquitt's probably going to be the favorite again this year. Lowndes and Valdosta is probably going to duke it out for second and third, according to the preseason projections. We'll see a little bit later on as we go into the season. But Region 1-6A is wide open. I think Region 1-5A. I'm sorry. Colmore corrects me every time I say this. Region 2-5A. I know
it's hard. I did the same thing.
Yeah, and so that should be wide open this year. I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite in that region. So we'll see, man.
It's crazy. My brother Luke Nelson, aka Big Buford, is in the house. Luke, I know that you are really looking forward to being a part of that scene there at Buford's brand new stadium. Of course, taking on Milton, and Luke Nelson's son, Kanan, is one of the top performers on that Buford defense. So, once again, speaking, of course, I know they're not South Georgia, but once again, Buford got to be mentioned as a top contender for the Class 6A state champion this year. They, once again, have got so much talent, Larry.
Yeah, Buford's one of those teams that, as we all know, really loaded year after year, right? And so because of that, because of where they are, because of the new facilities they have this year, you expect them to be a major draw for a lot of athletes. They have a lot of great athletes that fall within their school district to begin with because of where they're located. But you have other athletes in that metro area that want to move to Buford as well. To take advantage of that type of program. But, ever since Buford has made it to the highest classification, they've had a little bit of trouble getting over that final hurdle. The largest classification is just one of those classes they've never won a state championship in. They've had several seasons crack at it, but they just never gotten over. So is this the year that they're finally going to get over that hump and take it all the way? They've gotten close in the highest classification, just hadn't been able to do it yet.
You know, and it's really, you stop and somebody had to remind me of this the other day. You know, Bryant Appling has won 3 state championships.
Yeah.
But it's been so, Larry, you and I were at one of them, the Lee County Buford game. You remember the one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, my gosh. That was such an exciting game.
It was.
Between us, Lee County really should have won that game.
Of course they should have. Of course they should have. Knocking at the door at the 2-yard line in overtime, a touchdown wins it, and bless his heart.
It happens. That's football, right? It just happens.
You're right. I'm trying to remember the. Well, today is not a good day for names. Was
that Juju Lewis?
It was. Thank you, Larry. And Larry, you and I were standing about 10 feet from where that happened.
Man, it happened right in front of us, and as soon as that ball got punched out of his arms, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what just happened.
That was Jack Pope.
Yeah. And he was devastated.
Yeah.
He knew what had just happened.
Look, Jack Pope brought the wood, man. And listen, he earned his money that night. Pope, one of the hardest hitting safeties I've ever seen, and it was just mano a mano that night. It was great, 2 great footballs clashing at the 1-yard line. Ball pops loose. Buford recovers, and that's that. And you know, man, you want to talk about a range of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You're going from looking at winning the state championship, but Buford did not give up. They did what they had to do. It's just football at its finest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so nothing you could do but tip your hat to Pope and the Buford Wolves. But going back to it, so it just seems like that's been forever, Larry, that they've won a championship there. So let me ask you this, and I want to ask the Buford fans, and really anybody out there. Look, I think the world of Bryant Appling. I want to make sure, I know a lot of you are saying, yeah, we know that, Phil. You know, people accuse me of being the big Buford homer. Look, I just have a major respect. I know a lot of people that are Buford fans. I like Kenny Perlott. I hope I'm saying his name right. Kenny, forgive me if I'm not. We just talked about Luke Nelson. I mean, he's a great dude. I just like so many of the people up there at Buford. Tony Wolf, I just talked about. I made a lot of friends at Buford. I think they get a bad rap. You know, people hate a winner. Having said all that.
Wait. Stephen Wynn corrected me. It wasn't Juju Lewis. He was a quarterback. Juju McDowell.
That's right. Juju McDowell. That's right. Well, I think we were so focused on the Juju part of it.
Right.
But anyway, is the heat on Bryant Appling to win a state championship?
That's a good question. I don't know enough about Buford football to understand the political dynamics, because even in high school football, there's always a political dynamic. Right?
Sure.
Everybody loves the coach when they're winning like they should, but when they don't do things that are expected of them, then you got people that start to come out of the woodwork, that start angling for the guy's job. I feel sorry for head coaches. I really do. So, because that kind of stuff happens. So, with that said, I just don't know enough about the Buford political dynamics around the football program to answer that question well. But people have got to be talking up there about that. It's like we got all the talent, we've got all the facilities, we've got all the resources, and we've got the athletes. So, what's the holdup here? Well, the holdup is in the largest classification. There's a lot of good teams that have great talent, that have great coaching, that have great facilities, and it's just mano a mano, and they just come up short.
Guys, I know we got quite a few folks watching. We got some Buford fans watching. I'm sure I saw Luke Nelson, Big Buford. Luke, let me know your thoughts. I mean, is there any pressure up there? Again, because you've got so much talent on that Buford roster. Larry, they're going to be a favorite every year now. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? I don't think they really, from this point forward, especially with the growth of that area. I lived up there for 10 years in the neighboring county for Forsyth. So, and it was the fastest growing county in the country then. I'm not talking about the state, just the state. I'm talking about the country. So that has done nothing but ramp up every year. So you've got so much population growth that it becomes a strength in numbers deal, okay? Anyway, having said all that, I just think that Buford's going to be a favorite probably forever Even in this age of where you have team cycle, you have rosters cycle in and out with talent. But I think Buford is obviously going to be right up there, at least for the foreseeable future, Larry. So
Yeah, absolutely.
but I'd like to know some of y'all's feedback about Buford. What do you think up there? All right. Where are you going to be opening week? I posed that question. Some of the answers, by the way, Michael Lotta says Buford Stadium going to rank up there with the Texas stadiums as far as high school football is concerned. Good point there, brother. And that will be one that will be talked about just as much as when you remember when I think it was McKinley, Texas. If I'm not mistaken, that stadium opened up and everybody was talking about it, all the millions of dollars. Well, step aside because now you've got Buford Stadium that's going to be the talk of the country when it comes to high school football stadiums, Larry.
Yeah, so your question, where are you going to be at on opening night?
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Listen, I'm a Lowndes guy. Everybody knows where I'm going to be at. But if I were not a Lowndes guy, so let me answer your question that way. Okay. If I were not a Lowndes guy, where would I be? I would be over in Moultrie, Georgia. You know why? Because
absolutely.
Because Benedictine is going over to Moultrie, and that's going to be a really good game.
So I wrote a series which had to do with the top openers for 2025, top season openers for 2025.
Yeah.
I included several big-time games. It may have been the first game in that series that I started, Larry, and where I talked about and basically did a preview of both teams.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you something. The way that game came about in and of itself was a big thing. I remember I talked to Sean Calhoun, the head coach of the Packers. And look, he admitted to me, and you guys can go back and check out the story. All you got to do is pull it up, ITG Next, Georgia, and you can pull up season openers, Colquitt and Benedictine. But, Larry, Sean Calhoun really didn't want to do that game. He didn't want to play that game. If you'll remember, that was the game, that was the spot on the schedule last year that Colquitt hosted West High School from Utah.
Yeah. So
you remember that?
Yeah. So, Benedictine is just one of these programs that they're just not afraid to play anybody. It doesn't matter what classification they're in. They'll take on anybody. Now, some will say because they have athletes moving into their school system from all over the metro Savannah area, which may be the case. I don't know. But they're just one of these programs that if you want a good test early in your season, schedule Benedictine. They'll give you a test.
Okay. So speaking of Benedictine, we've mentioned a couple of things. Remember, you've got check this out, guys. Now, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but remember last year I put together the top 10 toughest schedules in the state. Yeah. I think Buford was number 2, and I haven't done it yet this year. Probably will, and it really probably shouldn't be a lot of different because remember this is the second year of the back end rather of the 2-year agreements that GHSA has for schedules, but. And I don't have the complete Benedictine schedule in front of me, guys, but look at Benedictine playing Buford over in Savannah this year, Larry.
Yeah.
Benedictine going to play Colquitt County to open up the season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to look any further, guys, and if y'all want to, you can. I dare you to tell me any other team that's got a tougher opening to the season than the Benedictine Cadets.
Yeah, so here's their schedule right here. And when we go over this schedule, I mean, this is not an easy schedule. I mean, they're, like you said, their first 2 games, non-region, is at Colquitt County. Then they play Buford. Then, Burke County, I don't know about them. They play they're at Westminster. Then
Burke County played for a state championship last year, Larry.
Yeah, I know. So, and then they travel to Waycross to play Ware County. And then they host Warner Robins. And then on October 24th, they're at Perry. So,
guys, are you kidding me?
That is a tough schedule, man.
Larry, was that back-to-back, or did you just kind of go through?
Okay, so I will give you all the games back-to-back, their entire season, okay?
Okay.
So Colquitt County, at Colquitt County. Then they host Beaufort. Then they're at Burke County. They're at Westminster. They're at Ware County. They host Warner Robins. They host Wayne County. They're at Perry, and they're at New Hampstead.
Wow. That is murderer's row, guys.
That's a tough one.
Look, I have not yet put together the story for the toughest schedules, but I think we just may have found the one.
Yeah. Now, according to this, they may have added a 10th game, but according to this, that's only 9 games. So they may be looking for a game. I don't know.
By the way, speaking of tough schedules, do you guys remember who last year I had rated as the toughest schedule? The team with the toughest schedule in the state?
Who's that?
The Veterans Warhawks.
Oh, is that right?
Man, let me tell you. You got Steve Dvorsny, who's coming in there to take over Veterans this year. Great coach, led Griffin to a state championship. We know the job he did down at Cairo, right?
Yeah.
The guy is one heck of a football coach. But he is now going to have his work cut out for him over at Veterans. And again, great school, great program. He's got the former defensive coordinator for Colquitt County going to join him. That's a huge addition to his Devo staff.
Guess who else he's got going to join him?
Say again?
Guess who else he has joining him?
Who?
Former Lowndes defensive coordinator Ashley Anders.
What?
Yeah.
At Veterans?
Veterans High School. They announced it on May 28th. Please welcome Coach Anders to the Warhawk family.
How about that? Well, guys, I got to tell you something. They may have their work cut out for him, but he's definitely going in with all of his guns, I can tell you, because he sounds like he is really beefed up that coaching staff just with the ones. And somebody help me out with the defensive coordinator that I'm talking about, formerly of Colquitt County. He was a longtime Rush protege, and his name escapes me right now. Colquitt County fans, help me out there. Big hello to Andrew Watkins, who's checking out the show. Andrew Watkins, big Darty High Trojan fan. What's up, Andrew? Thanks so much for checking out. Obadiah Farley's in the house. Larry, let's say hello to Obadiah.
Man, listen, every time you say that name, I just love that name, Obadiah. I don't know why.
That's a great name for sure. It goes into our Name Anonymous Hall of Fame for sure. But Donnie Jarvis, you're checking out the show. Donnie, tell me about your former defensive coordinator that's going up to Veterans to join Steve Dvorsny's staff. I mentioned hello to Kelly Fountain, who's checking out the show. By the way, and I mentioned Andrew Watkins. Andrew says he's going to be at home as Toombs comes calling. So, Andrew, that's Toombs and Darty that you're going to be watching?
Okay, so, Phil.
Yes.
You're talking about Jeremy Rowell.
That's him.
Yeah.
That's him. Yep, Jeremy Rowell. Jay Dennis checking out the show, representing Thomas County Central. Jason Michael Richmond, Houston County Schools are going to be tough this season. Lots of coaching changes and talent is everywhere around here. So, speaking of Jason Michael Richmond, this is another topic on my list that I put out today, and I mentioned it to Larry. And you've got the ultimate hint there with what Jason Michael Richmond just pointed out about Houston County Schools. Which team, and there may be one more than one answer on this one, guys, but which team do y'all think is the biggest question mark going into the season? Now, I'm not saying that they have the biggest question mark necessarily, but which team do y'all think? And I'll tell you mine. I'll tell you who. That's why I'm asking the question. And again, you have the ultimate hint here based on what Jason Michael Richmond said. And again, I'll read it and see if this will draw y'all's interest and maybe give you a clue as to who I'm talking about. Jason Michael Richmond says, Houston County Schools are going to be tough this season. A lot of coaching changes. and talent is everywhere around here.
Yep.
Having said that, I think veterans is going to be drastically improved. Number one, you got nowhere to go but up, right? But again, don't forget that toughest schedule. I anointed them having the toughest schedule in the state last year. However, as Larry just mentioned, you got Ashley Anders, who has been a head coach and defensive coordinator. Remember, he was the last head coach, Larry, to have some real success at Tift County.
Yeah, he was a former national champion assistant coach at the college level as well.
That's right, at BSU, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ashley Anders, of course, most recently of Lowndes High School, their defensive coordinator. And now you got Ashley Anders going up to help Steve DeVorsney. Think about that. You got Ashley Anders and you've got the Colquitt County defensive coordinator. What's his name? Coach Rawls?
Jeremy Rowell.
Yeah, Rowell. I'm sorry. So, man, you've got two great defensive minds there on one staff, and that's under Steve DeVorsney. So look out for veterans. That may right there be the most improved team, and they haven't even played a game yet. But going back to my question, which team is the biggest question mark? And I'm going to go ahead and let you off the hook.
Okay.
I think the biggest question mark is Houston County.
Okay.
Ask me why.
I probably know why, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Why?
Thanks for the easy setup there, Larry. A.J. Hill, 4-year starter at Houston County. Talk about pressure. Now, look, I love my buddy Jeremy Edwards. He's a good friend. I really like him a lot. He's head coach at Houston County. But you want to talk about pressure now. You had the ultimate, maybe one of the best quarterbacks for 4 years, Larry.
Yeah.
At A.J. Hill. But I can tell you, after talking with Jeremy Edwards, unless he's really sandbagging, I don't think that they've had any kind of major move-in, major transfer, trying to go with a young man who's come up through the system. But again, this is never disrespect to him. But I tell you, Houston County, you've got a lot of talent there, but I just don't know losing A.J. Hill and not being able to replace him with a quarterback nearly of the talent level of A.J. Hill. I just don't know where they're going to go. That's why I have anointed Houston County as my biggest question mark.
All right, so I'm going to answer your question. My answer differs from yours a little bit, but I'm going to actually write down another name of a high school there. As soon as I give you my answer, I'll go to the second one because this next one, I think it's a pretty good question. But the team that I'm looking for to do something this year that has potential to do something are the Northside Eagles. Because that's one of those schools, Phil, I think everybody would agree that, head coaches can make a major impact in high school just because of who they are, their presence, their aura, their coaching style, whatever the reason. I mean, just changing a coach can flip a team just like that. And so, I was kind of pleasantly surprised during the offseason when they named their new head coach and Coach Boone Williams, right? Coming from Langston Hughes.
Right.
And so just because he's going into that program now, I'm interested to know, anybody in the Houston County area, have you noticed athletes start to migrate and transfer over to the Northside school district? Because that's usually a telltale sign when a new coach, especially a multi-school system like that, when a new coach moves in, do you see athletes start to transfer into that school system? If the answer is yes, watch out for Northside. If the answer is no, I would give Coach Williams probably at least a couple of years before he gets his program. But he's such a dynamic coach or head coach that I can't wait to see what he does differently with the Northside Eagles. So I'm looking forward to see what Northside does. And I understand where you're coming from with Houston County. But Phil, the team that I'm looking forward to watching out of Houston County schools this year, which may surprise some folks because, up until the last few years ago, this team was probably one of the doormats up there. And it's the little old Perry Panthers. Are they now the number one team in Houston County?
What great point, Larry. We were just talking about 1-6A, and of course, I know all these teams aren't in the same region, but stay with me on this. So we're talking about a county, an area that really has been one of the most football talent rich areas and counties within the entire state, right? Now, I'm going to back away from the Gwinnett County. Okay, I'm going to exclude them. Those are the mega counties. I'm talking about Houston County, Middle Georgia, Perry. And I got to be honest with you, sometimes I still think of Perry as kind of being the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
I think of Houston County that way. Houston County used to be your baseball only school. They would take their lumps in football. Perry was that way. So it's completely reversed. Northside used to be on top of the world when it came to high school football, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be honest with you guys. Northside Warner Robins had one of the most dominating runs of any high school team in this country over a 20-year period. Warner Robins, we remember Warner Robins under Marquise Westbrook and how dominant they were. But you take away Warner Robins and Northside Warner Robins, Larry, you're right. Perry, Houston County, veterans, and in fairness to veterans, now they're the newest school. Isn't that right? I believe that's right. So, yeah. Am I missing anybody, by the way?
I don't think so. You got Northside, Warner Robins, you got Houston, veterans, and Perry. Yeah, 5 high schools.
So, that's a great point you make. We remember Perry winning the state championship 2 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Smith, what a great job he did, by the way, Larry. Go ahead.
That just goes to my point, whether you're talking about Northside and Coach Williams, or Obadiah brought up in the comments, what Justin Rogers was able to do from his first year and all the excitement around that program, changed it, flipped it on a dime. Yep. So the same thing can be said about Perry. When they got their coach, he basically changed the attitude,
the culture, everything, Larry.
Changed the culture, got them. Listen, there is nothing stronger in this world. There's no force that can even rival a bunch of high school boys that get emotional and rally behind a leader for a common purpose. And high school football, that's probably why it's so exciting, because you have all that mix. And so a charismatic leader comes into a system, he can change it just like that. And so that's what would happen with Perry. It's happened to Thomas County Central. I'm anxious to see if Northside is going to follow that same template.
So here's an interesting point on Northside Warner Robins. You're going to see Boone Williams, unless something has changed drastically, you're going to see Daniel Boone Williams start a 9th grader at quarterback.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So the young man was actually an 8th grader back in the spring game. Now he'll, of course, go through, he'll come out of the summer and enter his 9th grade year. And as of right now, he is the starting quarterback. And again, I told you it's a bad day for names, but he is he's going to be the starting quarterback going into in the fall, into the 2025 season. Now, and that's another thing we're seeing. I think I talked about this a couple of shows ago. We're seeing more and more of that, Larry.
Yeah.
More and more true freshmen. I don't know why I'm saying true freshmen. They're just freshmen. Going back to the old college thing, but we're seeing more freshmen starting in critical roles, and especially quarterback. Of course, Trace Hawkins is the biggest name that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Him taking over last year, Larry, at Calhoun, I believe, 3 games into the season. Remember, Calhoun started off 1-3, and then they go off and win 11 straight under the leadership of a freshman quarterback in Trace Hawkins. So my point being that I think it's one of the things you're going to see from Boone Williams starting a freshman quarterback. And again, it's not that unheard of like it used to be. Larry, Boone Williams, by the way, one of those guys that I just cannot see him losing. Know what I mean?
He's gonna figure out a way to win there at Northside. I would be shocked if he's run out of there on a rail because he's had several losing seasons. He's just one of those guys that's very charismatic, gets his players pumped up. And so I think it's not going to take him long to get that program going back in the right direction.
I agree with you 100%. You want to talk about a great hire in the off season? We had a lot of coaching change, Larry. We always do in Georgia. But I got to tell you, I think Boone Williams being hired at Northside Warner Robins may be numero uno. There, you with me?
You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you froze up on my screen for a second. So
okay.
Listen,
were you able to hear me?
Yeah, I missed the last part of your question.
Yeah, so I was talking about the Daniel Boone Williams. There's been a lot of great all-season hires. We mentioned Steve Dvorsky going to Veterans High School. But I got to be honest with you, Daniel Boone Williams going as a championship caliber coach.
Yeah.
Won a state championship at Langston Hughes. Took them to a state title game last year, Larry. Again, in the state's highest classification, like we're talking about. And he goes now to Northside Warner Robins.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, that's Northside Warner Robins fans should be absolutely ecstatic.
That's just one of the situations. I think they are cautiously optimistic. I think they're fired up, but they're kind of lurking in the weeds, in the shadows right now. Because listen, in their heyday, you couldn't get a Northside fan to stop talking, right? So the swagger has left that program as far as a fan base goes, but it's going to be interesting. I think they're lurking in the shadows, waiting for Coach Williams to make his mark on the program, get it going in the right direction, and I think they're going to be coming back out in full force. I think high school football needs programs like a Northside or a Lounge.
I agree 100%, Larry. 100%, Larry. That's a great talking point. Larry, I said the same thing that you said about, 5-6 years ago, maybe longer than that. And Larry, I'll tell you the program that I mentioned in it, but it's right along the lines of what you're talking about.
Okay.
There are certain schools, certain programs that we need to be playing consistently winning football.
That's right. And
you hit it right on the head, Larry. Great call in Northside Warner Robins. Who do you think I was talking about? Again, I'm just estimating here. Maybe going back, maybe a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say somewhere between 7 to 10 years ago, somewhere in that range. But it's a Southern Georgia team, Larry. Who do you think I was talking about? And it's not fair for me to put you on the spot like that, but it's a team that I remember saying it's important that this school, that this program has a winning football program.
Valdosta, probably.
That's not it, but that certainly applies to them as well, Larry. And it's a great guess, but it was Thomasville.
Oh, okay.
I just think Thomasville, when you're talking about tradition, Thomasville high school football has so much tradition. Now, it's a great thing. And of course, I was really talking about the city for the city of Thomasville. And now you've got Thomasville and Thomas County Central. Two really good football teams. Of course, we know that Thomas County Central has taken the lead there. There's no doubt about that. But it's good to see Thomasville, the city of Thomasville, having good winning football.
Absolutely. You strike up another interesting topic. Kind of stumbled on it, but it's that whole dynamic of rivalries of teams in the same county where we just got through talking about Houston County and the rivalries up there. Obviously everybody's familiar with Lowndes and Valdosta, but a rivalry that we kind of need to get kicked off again is that Thomas County Central Thomasville rivalry, because it was kind of back and forth there for several years, and just not too long ago Thomasville dominated that series. But now that Justin Rogers there, he's kind of flipped the script. And Phil, I'm afraid for the Thomasville Bulldogs when it comes to Thomas County Central. And here's why. Because what I've noticed over the years, and guys like Obadiah Farley and others can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've noticed over the years is whichever team basically had the best athletes, meaning that sometimes you'd have athletes migrating from the county to the city. Sometimes you have the athletes migrating from the city over to the county, and whoever had the better athletes that year typically won that rivalry, right? But what we're seeing now with Justin Rogers and all the resources that Thomas County Central is pouring into that program, including their outstanding 50, 60 million dollar, well, that's probably a little too high, 40, 50 million dollar athletic complex. I don't think Thomasville has the dollars and the resources to keep up with Thomas County Central. So as a result, I think you're going to see a mass migration of athletes out of the city over to the county school over there. And I think TCC is going to win that series for many, many years to come, as long as Justin Rogers is there.
Really? Now that's interesting. Now, Larry, we do have to remember, Thomas County Central is the bigger school.
Yeah.
So we got to be fair about it.
Yeah.
Remember, Thomasville is a single A school now.
Correct.
So just making sure that we're on a level playing field here. But I understand what you're saying. I will say this: it's going to be an exciting year for Thomasville. You've got Cam Hill, 4-year starter. Larry, I can remember the game. We were there. ITG next game of the week that year. We were at Thomasville.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas County Central at Thomasville. And I think that was coming off the year after Thomas County Central got beat by Roswell, if I'm not mistaken. And somebody may can correct me. But anyway, it definitely was the arrival of Coach Rogers. I mean, came in roaring, leading Thomas County Central,
Mm-hmm.
Who had just come off the Ashley Henderson era. But I can remember that game. You had the young quarterback for Thomasville, is Beckham, what's his last name? And Stephen Beckham, maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, Cam Hill came in, freshman, took over, Larry. He took his lumps, but he went on to become the starter. And now here we are 3-4 years later, and he's turned into one of the top quarterbacks in the state, Cam Hill. A name we'll be hearing about, and we'll look out for him, Larry, in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, my only point about talking about Thomasville and TCC and that rivalry and the direction it's headed is, in modern day football, and we see this with a lot of mobile athletes now, right? Transferring from school to school. And they typically transfer to schools that have better facilities, better resources, better access to college recruiters, that kind of stuff. And it's kind of hard to argue against that with what you see Central building over there as far as facilities goes, because I keep tabs on all these city and county budgets in South Georgia, because that's another part of my hobbies is government tracking and their spending. And the budget for Thomas City Schools doesn't rival Thomas County Central when it comes to athletic spending. This discretionary funding that comes that they pour into athletic spending, and Central has made the decision to commit to going down that road, and man, have they committed. Now it's going to be up to Thomasville. They're going to have to counter that to keep their athletes in the city school system, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if they, over the next couple of years, if they start to do some type of, not fundraising effort, because it's going to take more than that. If they're going to take some type of, city initiative as far as taxing goes to raise more money for that athletic program for the city school system, just to be able to keep up with Central.
Very interesting point, Larry, and that's something I'm sure a lot of people don't pay attention to, but it's definitely worth pointing out for sure. CJ Williams says, can we talk about hypothetical matchups? By the way, Stephen Tate, what's up, my man? We are releasing a follow-up story I wanted to mention real quick. If you'll remember back in February, we released a story. I wrote the story on top stadiums, top 10 stadium, the stadium atmospheres, environments. And from that came a lot of people talking about tailgating. And, of course, it all goes hand in hand, right, Larry?
Yeah.
And so we decided to reach out. We decided to put together a top tailgate, the top programs with the best tailgate. And I wrapped up that story today, and it should be posted maybe within the next couple of days. Be looking for that. I got some great comments from fans, from some athletic directors, some coaches. I think you guys are going to like it. But looking forward to that. Looking forward to releasing that so you guys can see it. So be on the lookout. And again, guys, be sure to take a look at all of our top 10 lists that we're putting out. We've been doing this all year, top 10 by positions. We're ranking the top top offensive, defensive players by position. And of course, also yours truly is releasing the classification top 10 preseason. So be on the lookout for that.
Hey Phil, let me say something real fast about that kind of stuff.
Yep.
because I've known you for a long time now, and I used to spend a lot of time over in your offices when you guys were located in downtown Valdosta when I was getting ready to go over there and do show prep for this show. And a lot of your viewers don't know this, but this is your full-time job, meaning that no one covers high school football across the state, not just Georgia, but you guys are down into Florida as well with programs like Mike DeBuck and the like. So I want to give you kudos, man, because a lot of our viewers do not know how much time, effort, research that you put into the stories that you post on ITG Next.
Larry, thank you for that, buddy. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem, man. When someone does a good job, they need to be recognized for it. So hats off to you for keeping us on.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you very much, Larry. I really appreciate that sincerely, buddy. I do appreciate that. Part of it's a labor of love. Of course, we've been fortunate to make a living, make a business out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, we cannot do it without the players, the coaches, the fans. I have made so many great relationships, Larry, and thank you again for saying that. I really do appreciate that. But we're winding down the show. I wanted to mention and just throw this out a couple of things. So we're expecting the playoff brackets for the 2025 season to be released any day now. But I want to talk about as we depart there's a possibility that, Larry, that starting next year, 2026, we're going to have, the GHSA is going to take a vote on this, and there's a possibility that we're going to have the larger classification go to a power ranking format, just like the Class A Division I, AA, and AAA schools did this past year, the private schools.
Mm-hmm.
They adopted their playoff brackets by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 through 32, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the old traditional region, for top 4 region format. Okay, you with me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So there is a very strong likelihood that next season, no, not 25, but 26, we're going to have that same format adopted by 4A, 5A, 6A, and 7A. And I hope it passes. Let me tell you why. This past season, we had coaches, and I'm not faulting them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's anything bad, but we had coaches that were already being able to pretty much project who their playoff opponent was going to be.
Yes.
If everything fell into place, and for the most part, it did. It was very predictable, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, I'm not knocking anybody. I don't want anybody to think that, but I'm just going to give you an example. Like we knew, I'll say we, and when Dean Fabrizio and I talked, and I'm talking about midway through the season, he pretty much knew that if things went the way that they should for his Lee County team, and that everything fell into place for Milton, that Lee County and Milton were on a collision course for a semifinal matchup in Milton, and that's exactly what happened. Okay.
Yeah, and so Phil, you bring up an interesting point, but there were other issues that came up with the current way it's seated, and as your viewers are probably well aware of, currently the top four teams in a region get seeded for the playoffs.
That's
And
right.
then based on an arbitrary region one versus region five, whatever, they set up the brackets that way. And one of the consequences, I think unintended consequences of doing it that way, and we've done that way for years now in the upper classifications, is you might have two very, very highly rated teams meeting in the second round of the playoffs, where you get a great team that gets knocked out early because you got like a top 5 team here and a top 5 team here playing in the second round, and then all of a sudden on the other side of the bracket you got someone that's barely scraping by in their region, but because of the way the bracket is laid out, they make it all the way to the quarterfinals. So it just robs the fans of potential.
Larry, keep talking, buddy. Keep talking.
It just
Keep
robs
talking.
the fan of
We'll
potential
take a quick break.
later round matchups. So one of the benefits of the upper classifications switching, and this is not a done deal. I mean, they're still talking about this, but Phil and I like the direction that the conversation is headed with the GHSA. So hopefully starting in the season 2026 next year, that you would have that. So you would have, in essence, at the larger classifications, class 4A and above. So you could possibly have the top 4 teams again making the playoffs. But then once you get the 32 teams, like in the lower classifications, you start to seed those teams 1 through 32, and not this arbitrary, seed 1 for region here plays seed 4 over here. No, it's seeded 1 through 32. And so in the first round, you would have the number 1 seed in the state faces the 32nd seeded team in the state. And then you fill in the blanks that way. And so that way you have a lot more equity spread out in the playoff system. So you have the teams that have worked their tails off and had a great season being rewarded through this power ranking system of having a higher seed. So what are some other benefits of having a higher seed, right? One of those obviously is hosting early round playoff games. So there is a potential that you could still have the second seed in your region, that if things laid out just right in this power ranking, that you could have potentially, at least 2 home games that you would be hosting in the playoffs. Right now, if you're the second seed in the region, there's a very good chance that you just host 1 playoff game the very first round, and then the second round you're probably going to be on the road. That's just the way it shakes out. So I'm all in favor of a power ranking system when it comes to playoff season in the upper classifications.
Sorry about that, Larry. But had to take a quick restroom break. But,
no problem.
I think it's the second time that's ever happened to me since I've been doing this show. But anyway, so as I came back in, I guess you were talking about continuing the conversation about the playoff bracket and the predictability of such.
Yeah, and so I made the point where in the current system you've got the situation where it's very possible that 2 highly ranked teams are facing each other in the second round, which is not fair to either team, right?
Okay,
so
right.
This past season you had Valdosta and Carrollton playing in the second round. You had Lowndes taking on Buford in the second round.
Larry, and that was my point before I had to go to the little boys' room. But so if you'll remember, and I made this point a couple of different occasions, and a lot of people thought I was crazy for it, and I get it, but if you'll remember, I called for a reseeding.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Yeah. And what I was proposing, and I mean, I didn't put together really any kind of major proposal. I just mentioned it very casually, but my thought was to avoid what you just described, Larry. My thought was after the first round of the state playoffs, let's actually do a reseeding.
Yeah.
And let's try to avoid, what we ran into, what you just described last year with, well, again, Lee County meeting Milton. And this is no knock on the other teams. That I'm not saying they didn't deserve to be in the state title game. I mean, Lee County and Milton played in the semifinals, but a lot of people felt like those were the 2 best teams in Class 5A last year.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people were like, man, this is really sort of the de facto state title game. And it'd be kind of a hard to, to make an argument with that. So I say all that to say, if this power ranking formula goes forward for the 2026 playoffs in classes 4A, 5A, 6A, and 7A, or I'm sorry, there's no 7 out. I keep forgetting about that. But if they go forward with a power ranking system similar to the one that they used in the lower classification this past year, there's not going to be that level of predictability. In other words, coaches will not be able to forecast who they're going to be playing. And the reason for that is every play after every playoff round, okay, the formula is going to determine who is going to be playing whom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way, you're not going to know for the most part. I'm not going to say it's going to be completely eliminated, the forecasting, and the ability to predict, but for the most part, you're not going to be able to predict who your opponent's going to be until you get into the playoffs on a week by week basis. I like that. There, in essence, is your reseeding, if you will, that I had advocated for last year.
Yeah, other than the playoffs field, I wish the GHSA would do one more thing.
What's
to
that?
Help these teams in the non-region part. One of the reasons they're talking about doing this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to Southern teams and teams on the coast, that kind of stuff, is there's still a problem with forcing these teams to travel as much as they do, especially in the early rounds of the playoffs. That's one of the reasons that's driving this conversation now. By addressing the playoffs. But so something else that is happening with a lot of these teams down here is in the non-region part of their schedule. They're having to pay some teams like thousands of dollars to come in just to get a team to come and play a non-region game. Or if they don't do that, they've got to go up to the metro Atlanta area. Again, travel and the cost associated with it. So I wish the team, one thing that GHSA did by consolidating, you remember we used to have 7 classes, right? So by taking away the largest class and consolidating, they were hoping to address long distance travel for these teams by putting more teams in a region. But the problem still exists. So what I wish the GHSA would do would establish something like what I call companion regions, whether it's basically regions that aren't necessarily in the same classification, but maybe a similar size region that, let's say, a region 1 6A and a region 2 5A, right?
Yep.
Where you have very similarly talented programs, but you kind of pair them up. These companion regions, if you will, you kind of pair them up for non-region play. So the GHSA says to these 2 regions, hey, we're going to set you 2 up as companion regions with the understanding that you're going to schedule each other's teams to play for the non-region part of your schedule. So it doesn't affect region schedules and seedings for the playoffs, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It addresses the cost of travel, and as a byproduct of that, fans like us get treated to better quality games during the non-region part of all these schedules down here.
Here. I like it, Larry. Great point you're making. Evan Reese says the fact that Roswell and Hughes were playing in the second round last year, while Sprayberry was playing Noonan in the second round, was crazy.
Yeah.
And he's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why this hopefully this power ranking system won't go into effect. Do you guys remember we actually adopted this format? What was it, 3-4 years ago?
Yeah.
No, it was longer than that, Larry. It was the year that Tift County went in as the 32nd. They may have even went in at because they did not finish in the top 4 in the region. Do you remember this?
Vaguely. I don't remember all the details of it.
Okay, Ashley Anders was the head football coach, and I'm like you. I don't remember all the details, but I remember Tift County, I think it was like 5-5 or so. Anyway, they got the at-large bid in, I believe it was then 7A. Okay. And they made it into the playoffs and they beat a couple of pretty good teams. Anyway, they made it to the quarterfinals and they lost, I think, to Archer in overtime. My point being that, see, that's why I like this system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because under the old traditional format, Larry, Tift County would not have even qualified for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I remember what you're talking about now. Vaguely remember it, but I remember what you're talking about now.
Yep. I remember I was not able to go to the game. Well, I mean, we were working, but I remember I think GPB had that game, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, by the way, I do want to mention we will be once again having our ITG next game of the week. Not at liberty to really talk about any of the games. Still working out some deals, some agreements, but did want you guys to know you can look forward to that on Friday nights again this year. ITG next Georgia game of the week. Okay, as we wind down the show, and I want to thank everybody for again staying with us tonight, for joining the the conversation. We'll kind of give you the final rank or the final ranking. Give you the final word here. See if we got any kind of good final words from our folks watching the show. Michael Fowler says power rankings will end the cupcake schedule.
You think so?
Oscar, I'll take his word for it.
I think what he's referring to is the calculation that goes into that power ranking.
That's right. That's exactly, and he's right.
You might get rewarded with more points in beating a team that is better ranked versus nobody from Savannah or the coast or something like that.
And some people are mistaking this for the Max Preps.
Yeah.
Power. That's not the case. This is, I'm pretty sure, a GHSA proprietary formula that they're using, Larry.
Yeah.
But Michael Fowler, I think you're absolutely right. Oscar Miles, my buddy Oscar Miles, big Carver Columbus fan, who I think they are a shoo-in, in my opinion, to repeat as state champions. Oscar Miles, Larry, says Stephen K. Wynn, Bridgewater team was loaded and full of track kids. Okay, what's he talking about? But we're different in Georgia. Milton's speed and physicality, they would beat them. I think we're talking about some hypothetical matchups here, which I'll ask y'all this. What would happen if last year's Milton team played St. John Bosco?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
No. I'm sorry. You said either one, but I was really intending to say modern day. 6.5 dozen another.
Yeah.
Modern day, widely considered the top team in the country. That's why I'm asking.
Listen, as good as Milton is, as highly ranked as they were last year, I still think they would have lost to Modern Day and Bosco by a couple of touchdowns.
Who was it? It was Creekside, the state champion. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
They got beat by one of those two aforementioned teams, like 63-0 or something.
Mm-hmm. And they were a good team. They were a good Georgia team.
Absolutely. But what I think that goes to your point, Larry.
Yeah,
that you mentioned.
Yeah. Now, as far as the hypotheticals, I saw a couple of comments where they were using teams out of the South Florida area, and the South Florida area is one of those areas that is just loaded with talent. Very talented teams down there, but those teams, that talent seems to migrate from school to school, so you never know what team you're going to get year to year. I remember one year, Miami Northwest came up to Lowndes when Corey Brown was here, and Lowndes beat them pretty handily. Now, a couple of years later, what was that team that came from South Florida? I cannot remember.
American Heritage.
They beat the stew out of my Vikings pretty soundly that year. So it depends on what year, because a lot of the athletes in the state of Florida, with their transfer rules, can transfer even up to enrollment, and with no penalty of ineligibility, they can literally move overnight and start the next game. So that's just the Wild Wild West in the state of Florida, where you have talent migrating from states, and there's nothing. It's completely legal. So that's what you see a lot in the South Florida teams, talent migrating from school to school down there.
Stephen K. Wynn, who, as I mentioned before, giving credit where credit's due, Stephen K. Wynn is our unofficial, kind of like Larry is, unofficial extension of an employee for us here at ITG Next. If we ever have a question, we call up Larry or Stephen K. Wynn.
Hey, Stephen, have you gotten a check yet?
You guys are part of our payroll savings plan, which means if we don't pay you, we save on our payroll. But Stephen K. Wynn was saying, Larry, modern day, it's actually, yeah. Anyway, modern day would have beaten Milton. I was thinking I was not pronouncing it right. Anyway,
You're right, modern day.
What's that?
You're right, modern day.
Yeah. But I think everybody, Larry, is in agreement kind of what you were saying. Modern day would have beaten Milton. I would sure love to have seen them played, though.
Sure.
By the way, guys, are we still, is the Geico Champions Bowl series still being played?
I don't think it is anymore, is it? Didn't it stop a couple of years ago?
I don't think they did it last year. I may be mistaken. And the reason I brought that up, you remember that solid Collins Hill team that had Travis Hunter?
Yeah.
And the quarterback who wound up going to Missouri, Sam Horn. They went out to Washington State, and got beat up pretty bad by the Washington State champion. Larry, did we see a theme that's developing here, by the way?
Yeah.
We seem to think that we've got the best high school football in Georgia, and I'm not one to argue that. But, guys, got to tell you, when our state champions venture outside the state, and we're going off a very small sample size, I'll be honest with you. But
Phil, this is the way I would address that. I think overall across the state, from Class Single A all the way to Class 6A, I think the overall football quality is better in the state of Georgia. But when you take best on best, I think some of these other programs like a Modern Day or Bosco or some of these other programs, De La Salle in their era, these teams are on a different level just because of the level of athletes across the board. I'm not talking about just, one or two or five or 10. I'm talking about a 22-man roster. Just about every one of them are major D1 recruits. And so as a football state as a whole, from top to bottom, I think the quality of football in Georgia is better even than the state of Texas. But when it comes to individual teams, like the best team in the state of Georgia versus Modern Day, I don't think there's any competition. I think Modern Day wins that 10 out of 10 times.
I hear what you're saying, Larry. I do, and I want to be respectful. I just don't understand the reasoning, though, Larry.
Okay.
And please don't, no disrespect intended, because the proof's in the pudding. But why is that? I mean, what, help me out.
To me, it just comes down to population. We see what happens in the metro Atlanta area, right?
Sure, right.
Population.
Right.
But that's nothing compared to Los Angeles. That's not you're talking about the population of Los Angeles is humongous, right? Sure. And you talk about the resources out there as well. So, you got athletes that come from all over the country, and they've done it year after year after year after year because they know that they're usually, fast lane highways to major D1 programs. Now, I'm hoping that starts to change with some of the, transferring that's going on in the state of Georgia, but it's nothing compared to what these other programs have, because they have the depth, not just the breadth of athletes, but they have them stacked 2-3 levels deep. Versus, our best right now seems to be Grayson, Buford, Milton.
Yep. Carver, Columbus.
And they might be able to compete. But when we see these programs that from the state of Georgia play some of these other premier programs. Sometimes they're good games, but most of the time they're not.
Yeah, another one came to mind, and that was the Lee County. You remember when Lee County was state champions? And again, guys, Stephen K. Wynn, help me out here. Lee County was state champions the year, I believe it was when they beat Coffee. You remember they hosted the team from Maryland, Larry.
Yeah. St.
You
Francis.
remember what? Huh? Yeah, St. Francis. And my goodness. Larry, St. Francis came down and physically assaulted Lee County.
Yeah, that was one of those situations where, Lee, because they're playing in front of their home crowd, and they consider basically when a game like that, all of South Georgia is basically their home crowd. So the emotion of that game kept them in it for a quarter and a half, but then the athleticism, entire team wide from St. Francis just took over.
Indeed, it did. But Larry, and let's close with this. So we have just in the last 15, 20 minutes, Larry, and to our viewers.
Yeah.
And let me know if we missed anybody, but we've made the connection now with the Lee County versus St. Francis. We've made the connection with the undefeated Collins Hill team with Travis Hunter and Sam Horn going out to Washington State and getting beat up pretty bad. I take that back. They lost in overtime.
Yeah.
So that was a good tight game, okay? Still, remember when Valdosta, I think it was the 2018 state championship. I could be mistaken about the year. Remember when Valdosta went out to the Star in Frisco, Texas, and they took on the team from Arizona. Do you remember that?
Yes. Got beat pretty bad.
They got beat pretty bad. Candler, not Chandler, but Candler. The Candler Wolves from Candler, Arizona. So, Larry, we're looking at now examples or samples, if you will, of Georgia's best going up against Maryland's best, Arizona's best, Washington State's best. Now, come on. You see where I'm going? We seem to think, and I understand your point you made earlier, but Georgia needs to start winning some of these my state versus your state games.
Right.
If we're going to continue to claim that we've got the best high school football talent in the country, period. Again, I'm not saying we don't.
Yeah,
but
I think what you're talking about, I think the difference between mine and your argument is, there is a concentration of talent into a handful of programs out west. Now, in the state of Georgia, as we see in the, college signings, players that get sent to the NFL, that kind of stuff, by a number of different metrics. Just the pure number of athletes spread across the state of Georgia rivals any state, including California and Texas, right? But some of these programs have that talent concentrated in a handful of programs. I think that's the biggest difference that we see now.
But isn't that interesting? When you start
really
to break that down?
Mm-hmm.
All right, final comments. Stephen K. Wynn, taking us back to that St. Francis game. Stephen K. Wynn says, Phil, Lee was in the game into the third quarter. St. Francis roster covered 9 states. Fair point, Stephen. And that's a good point. Thank you for keeping us honest there. 2016 was the year Valdosta took on the Candler Wolves out of Arizona.
Yeah, Phil. So one of these shows when I come back.
Hey, Matthew Fielder, how you doing, buddy? Go ahead, Larry.
Phil, one of these shows when I come back on, you got to promise me to cover a topic, and we can do it like off and on throughout the show. But man, now that we're approaching close to football season, I would love for the tailgate aficionados out there, I would love to find out what is your favorite tailgate recipe.
I love it.
beyond hamburgers and hot dogs. I don't want to eat any hamburgers and hot dogs. What is the best tailgate recipe that you want to brag about? Because man, I'm that excited about this season. So I'm going to be experimenting in my own kitchen on coming up with some kind of tasty recipes for tailgating this season.
Let me, if I could segue off of your comment and
Yeah.
remind everybody, I just wrapped up our story on top tailgaters,
Mhm.
our top tailgating programs. And the insight was incredible that I got, the feedback that I got. But I'm going to just tell you point blank, from my personal experience, not many people do it better than Stephen Tate
Oh,
and
yeah,
the crew at Coffee High.
yeah,
I'm talking like what maybe think about. I'm not talking about hamburgers, hot dogs. Yes, they do that, but I'm talking pot roast.
yeah.
I'm talking prime rib. I'm talking casseroles. Now that's taking tailgate to a whole different level. But anyway, Larry, I like it. One other thing I want to add to that too. Let's talk about press box fare. Now I know that in fairness, that's not going to be applicable to everybody because everybody doesn't get to taste the press box food. So it's going to be a small sample size. But nevertheless, as we leave, I want to thank Harold Burgess. Harold's son is the great Travis Burgess for Grayson, Elite 11 nationally. Just got back from Southern California not long ago. Harold, thanks so much for your support, man, and checking out the show. We appreciate it. And by the way, this afternoon we had an announcement, and we'll close with this. It was our number one rated cornerback, Lasiah Jackson, out of Lee County, in an announcement at Lee County High School. Don't know if you guys have been keeping up with this. I think Lasiah's last four were Southern California, Stanford, Ohio State. I may be off. Anyway, Lasiah made his commitment today. He's going to attend the University of Stanford.
Wow,
And I'm going to tell you,
must be a smart kid.
I was just about to say the same thing, Larry. Congratulations, young man, whether you play a down of football or not, which of course you should, but you're going to be guaranteed to have, as long as you keep your studies up, pretty good degree from Stanford, right?
Yeah, listen, that's one of those handful of schools in the country where you walk into an employer and with a Stanford degree you're going to get the job. Yeah.
There, Georgia Tech. Pretty interesting that we got a number of kids that are transferred that we are seeing committing to California.
Yeah.
Earl Brooks' son, Cam, is committing to the California Golden Bears. I like to see that. So, anyway, Harold, thank you for your kind words, buddy. I appreciate you. Back at you. Larry, I'll give you the final word, man. Let you take us out of there. Take us out of here.
Listen, Phil, it is July 7th. Teams are ending their, dead week that everybody enjoyed. One last respite before they really kick off their, now it's a sprint. It's no longer a jog or a marathon. Now it's a sprint to get ready for the season, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see how these teams start to position themselves because we have a lot of question marks about programs in the South and Middle Georgia areas. Is it going to be? How is Irwin County going to do with a brand new head football coach? How is Appling and Fitzgerald going to do with new head coaches? Right.
Good point.
How is Region 1-6? Can Justin Rogers continue that powerhouse that he's building over there in Central, or is Fabrizio going to put the brakes on that and reclaim the region supremacy in Region 258? So a lot of question marks. So that's why we're so excited heading into the season. So I hope you guys are just as excited as we are. So as you expect us to bring our A game in these programs that we present to you, we as hosts expect you as fans to bring your A game when it comes to being a great fan this fall. So that's my final word.
Well said, Larry. Big thanks to our friends at Pepsi Cola, as well as Dr. Kevin Collins of the Houston Clinic, sponsors of our show We do it every week. Extra Point with Phil Jones tonight. It was Extra Point with Phil Jones and Larry Godwin. Hopefully, we'll have Mark Dykes back next week. And at some point, guys, probably going to be going to 2 days a week like we've done in the past, Monday and Thursday. So, Larry, thank you for answering the bell today. Love having you on the show. You always bring great content and great stuff to the show. We value your friendship and your association with us here at ITG Next, buddy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. And anytime, man. I love talking about this stuff. Love interacting with your audience. You got a great, loyal audience. So thumbs up to everybody involved.
Absolutely. And he's right. We've got the best viewers in the state, bar none. Thank you guys for your confidence you place in us. Thank you for your loyalty. I want to thank Flint Dykes back at Central Control for making it happen on his production level. Guys, we'll see you next week right here at ITG Next Georgia. Extra Point